Welcome to the House of Kanaz. It is Sunday, August 23rd at 10:01 p.m. Eastern Time as I record this. It's been quite a month. We are astrologically in between the eclipses. There was a solar eclipse that happened last week. And then this week on Friday, depending on your time zone, Friday on the East Coast will be the lunar eclipse. And the eclipses, I think, tend to be these periods of time in which there is a shift. Okay. And in between eclipses is about 6 months. So there's a series that this lunar eclipse is going to complete this particular eclipse phase, and then 6 months later about we will have another set of eclipses. And it's like um they invite new things, new problems, new scenarios in. There's something that happens during these phases that then kind of like set the precedent for the next 6 months. And I find that to be the case personally, but also politically. And I think that's something to keep track of is during this period in August, like what's going on with you? How, are there changes? Are there things that memories, things that are popping up, dreams that are popping up? Are there thoughts that are popping up that maybe you're approaching differently? Maybe you're approaching life differently. Maybe you're trying something new. Maybe new people are coming in your life, whatever, right? The thing about astrology is that I think it's a useful tool to organize time, to organize your thoughts, to organize events. It serves as like bookkeeping, right? Like when we look at our calendar, if we think about a calendar, I had no idea I was going to talk about this, but this is just the stream of consciousness. When we look at a calendar, I can tell you the date, I can tell you the time. Okay. And that's one like bookkeeping system. Astrology offers like another layer to that, in that you can look at the celestial patterns, and what I've talked about in past episodes, things that I'm keeping track of is like, for instance, when Mars is making a conjunction, a square, or an opposition, in particular to Saturn, to Uranus, to Pluto. Those tend to be points in which you see something in the news. You see a point of friction. You see an attack. You see some sort of event happening. And again, it allows you to kind of piece these events together in a series of like, okay, here was the conjunction of Mars and Saturn. Then when the square comes, when it's 90 degrees apart, what's the next chapter of that story? Right. And kind of looking at it from that lens as Mars goes around the circle, and you know Saturn is moving a lot slower than Mars, understanding just the story between those two planets, knowing that everything else is also there. So it gives, I think, an important lens to contextualize time. And one way that I have found, like how I have learned astrology, is going back, through time using astrology and seeing, okay, when I experienced this particular aspect, like when I experienced Pluto squaring my moon, my Mercury, my Venus, what was going on in my life? It was a very difficult time in my life in which, like, I had a very difficult time sleeping, and I was in therapy for the first time and not doing well. And that time really shaped how I approached relationships, how I view relationships. Um, and so looking back at these like difficult junctures that I have had in life and seeing how they corresponded, like what the astrological correspondences were for those junctures has been tremendous in my learning experience. So if you are interested in astrology, I think that that is something um, really to do. I think that's an important exercise. I don't think it's ever done because in astrology, at least for me, I'm always learning different approaches or different skills. So then I want to apply those different approaches to those different scenarios and seeing them from maybe a different vantage point or so forth. Maybe something comes to mind that is a healing thought. And again, I'm hoping that you by you listening to this, you understand or you have maybe even a idea or conception of the possibility that astrology can be healing. But when you look at your birth chart, you kind of have to accept yourself. Like this is who you are. And there's many things in my birth chart that were things that were ridiculed, criticized, not appreciated by many people in my life. And by seeing them in symbolic formation helped me to come to terms with, well, this is part of my nature. Like, sure, there's gradients in how it can manifest, how it can be represented in my personality, but it's still there. And over this period of time, I mean, like, there's been a lot of things that in my life have changed, a lot of things that I have lived through, but I feel like astrology has been part of this process of me returning back to myself and recognizing times when I was modifying myself to be more palatable to other people. And I have often felt throughout my whole life that I was holding myself back because I was. It's not simply that I felt it. It was something I was doing out of a protective state. And now it's the time in which I feel that I can let that go, that I'm willing to brave the consequences of those decisions. Whereas before, when you're a child, you're under the authority of your parents. You're not in control of what's going on. And again, as a kid, I was fully aware of that. And I, geez, I had no idea this is where it was going to go. I remember when I was 7, like having a really difficult time. And there was this day in which I got so fed up just from like the fighting that would happen at my house, the abuse that would happen at my house. I remember this one day that like I packed up my book bag. I'm 7 years old. I packed up my book bag and I was gonna run away from home. And we had a long driveway and I got to the end of the driveway in which you can't, it's far away enough from the house that someone in the house can't see. And I continued walking the street to the point where like, you know, I quickly came to a realization at age 7 that I was not going to be able to survive in this world alone at age 7. it's kind of a hard thing to realize. I wanted to escape and I couldn't escape. And I remember then walking back to the house and really, I had to talk with myself in that I said, you're gonna have to fucking suck this up. Okay. Again, like I'm not being facetious. Like this is exactly how it went. And I'm 7 years old, right? And I'm having these realizations that there is no escape. There's really no escape if I want to stay alive. Which the other thing was like I remember like not wanting to deal with things at that age. And anytime I brought up an issue, like it's kind of fucked up that I wrote to Santa Claus that year, even though I didn't believe in Santa Claus. I wrote to Santa Claus that year that I just wanted to be taken away. I think that's a time that you send your child to a psychologist, but that never happened. And this is where, like, I, at a very young age, I had to pick myself up. Like, no one else in my family was supporting me. Like, I had to have the talk with myself and parent myself and figure out a strategy to survive that house, to survive that structure. It was not a structure in which I was able to be myself. And so I basically ended up living in my bedroom. I would go to school and then would stay in my bedroom. We would have dinner and stay in my bedroom. Like I think that a lot of people don't fully grasp that a child at this developmental stage, a child having this realization that they can't trust their parents, that even at that age, like I recognized I was different. I knew I was different from the boys, and it made me feel very uncomfortable when my family would say very homophobic things. I was already registering that, right? I was already suspicious of them. There was already tension. And at age 7, like it wakes you up. It wakes you up. And it has been something that has caused a lot of frustration in that for my childhood, my teenage years, I just felt like I couldn't be myself. And it wasn't until I moved away for college that I finally began to relax. But it's not like you can just suddenly relax, right? It is a gradual process that like I still am going through. I am still going through that stage of relaxing. Like I catch myself not breathing deeply. And that has been an important practice for me. Just breathing, just paying attention to my body, just meditating. Like it's really the simple things that have um, brought that back to me, but also like from a creative standpoint, this whole work that I'm doing with astrology. This is something I've been interested in all my life. Like I've always seen this as like a thing that I'm going to devote a lot of time to. However, I never would really speak about that to most people unless they had already voiced an acceptance or an interest in the subject. It wasn't something that I brought up because I felt like it wasn't safe. Now I just bring it up because I don't care. Like there's something that, and like there's something that happens when one of your parents dies. And so with my mom, like there was something that happened on all levels, like spiritual, energetic, mental, physical, things started happening that like for instance this year physically I've had weird sensations at periods of time throughout my body. And like this idea that this practice that I'm trying to go through of like relaxing my body. A lot of my work this year has been about like recognizing a lot of tension in my stomach and relaxing that and doing exercises and coming up with exercises to do. And it's all just breathing exercises and like gentle touch. But I've been having a lot of like really weird sensations that feel like bubbles in certain areas, just like releasing things. Um, and I feel very different mentally today than I felt like a year ago or 2 years ago. Like I recognize a major change, but there's something that happened when my mom died that it was more like I don't give a fuck. Like I thought I didn't give a fuck, but now it's like, no, I don't give a fuck. And then like I have no fucking problem telling someone off. Like before, um, it would take more, like I would try to be way more forgiving and patient. And now I'm like, no, like I'm gonna tell them that this is bothering me because it's bothering me. And they need to know because if I don't say it, if I'm not honest, like they won't know. They won't know. And then they're going to continue just doing it. And then, like, the pattern that I had been in is like, I would just keep it in, and then one day explode. And it looks like nothing is happening, but it's like the accumulation of 1,000 cuts type of thing. So I try to call things out as they happen so that I don't fall into that state. And like again, before I stopped talking to my mother, I was implementing that strategy because I've recognized that I felt like that was having doing harm to our relationship. And the thing is people may say that they want you to be honest, but a lot of people can't handle it. A lot of people can't handle if you try to tell them about times in which they hurt them, in times in which they hurt you, rather, and you know, depending on their emotional capabilities, often if they feel bad, they're going to project it onto you. You know, if I tell you, like, hey, 20 years ago, you said this thing to me, I still think about it every day. You can't handle that. Like, it goes back to what I was saying before. Like, I've had to handle it by myself. I had to suck it down by myself. And that, like, if you can't even acknowledge that, you can't even not acknowledge the pain, you know? So it's come to the point where I'm like, all right, like this isn't working. And I'm not gonna like pussyfoot around it. I'm gonna just tell you like this is not working. And I didn't expect that, but I think that that is just a common experience. And I think that this is something that just as you age, you become more and more protective of your space and your energy because you understand the ways in which you were using your energy improperly, or you were perhaps inviting drama into your life that then took you away from the things that you actually wanted to do. All right. That's my little tirade, unexpected tirade that I had no idea was going to come out, but clearly these things needed to be said. So, another thing that's on my mind is what's happening in Gary, Indiana. And so Gary, Indiana suffered quite a few natural disasters like tornado, flooding, and there's been a lot of damage to their infrastructure to the point where it's been almost 2 weeks and there's thousands of people without power. And you know, it seems as though parts of society are collapsing there. And if you haven't done any research on this, I suggest you to look at a few videos, look at some articles, because I think that like this is what I fear is that at least here in America, the infrastructure is not being updated. Instead, we're using the tax dollars to go to war instead of reinvesting in the country. So what that means is that at the anytime a natural disaster happens, the infrastructure is going to either be severely damaged or it's going to be, it's going to crumble. And is it going to be replaced? Will we actually have the money to replace it? And that's where, with El Nino, so there's like a super El Nino that is formulating in the Pacific Ocean at the moment. And so uh, it's supposed to really take hold this coming October. And that can cause even more dramatic weather events. So again, I feel like we're entering this time in which there's just going to be a lot more natural disasters happening. But because of the way that the money is being managed at the US government, there's not money that is being adequately reserved to help build infrastructure. Like we're waiting for it's essentially like we're not doing anything proactively. We're waiting for the infrastructure to be hit by a disaster, and then maybe we'll do something. But then on the flip side, like if you look at parts of Florida, parts of California, there's also this like insurance crisis where certain homes are considered either like a flood risk or a fire risk, are unable to get home insurance anymore. Well, if you can't get home insurance, are you going to be able to sell your home? Like a lot of people have their equity in their homes. So that's causing another disaster in which, like what I'm afraid of is like these disasters are going to happen. People get like locked in that place, essentially. Like if if the electricity is down, are you like you don't have access to food, to water, to whatever, right? Maybe gas stations are not functioning. You're kind of stuck, right? And then if you think about these places in which insurance is refusing to insure houses because of fire risk or flood risk, you can't sell them, so you're kind of stuck. And yeah, it's this feeling that like this thought that I've had for the past few years of like, okay, are we like what are we approaching here? What am I willing to tolerate? What is my line? And I think this is important for everyone to think about is like, what is their line? At what point are would you leave your country? What are the signs? And like I've mentioned in other episodes how, the level of prepping that I have done and that I plan to continue to do. But then I had this thought of like, prepping only gets you so far. If infrastructure is not going to be restored or it's not going to be repaired, you can't, we don't have fucking bunkers off the coast of New Zealand with 5 years of canned food. to survive off of, right? So like at some point, like prepping only gets you so far. Like at some point you there will be, I think a lot of preppers like want to just stay in their house indefinitely and think that they can wait it out. And it's like at some point, if something's so long, like you're not going to be able to just wait it out. Like you're going to have to go out into the world and like find food to survive. So I've been thinking about that. I know that's rather dire. Those are my thoughts at the moment and thinking about how, when you don't have access to food, when there's no rule of law, you know, how quickly things can fall apart. And I always go back to COVID because while COVID was happening, there's the March 2020 when COVID was becoming a big deal in America. That to me, I always felt like that was a harbinger. That was forecasting a future. I always felt like what I learned that month was just how arbitrary everything is, how made up everything is. It really, like, I always felt that, but then people would tell me, no, it's blah, blah, blah. And then all of the things that I had said, all of the things that I always felt, it was suddenly confirmed. What I mean by that was like my job at that time, I always wanted to work from home. And then COVID happened, suddenly I can work from home and I'm able to do everything and I'm getting the same salary. And it's like, why couldn't you have given me this privilege before? Like, it took a virus for me to work from home. And I always knew that I would have the ability, like, I know I have the personality that can do that kind of setup because of how, like, because I know who I am, right? And to be like, oh no, we don't trust people that work from home. We tried it once, it didn't work, blah blah blah. How will we manage you? Um, all of these questions, all these the fucking shit that I was told suddenly no longer mattered. Suddenly I was able to work from home. Okay, like it showed people's asses. And the other thing was like all of a sudden there started to be these coalitions of states. Like, okay, you can only travel between these states. You can't cross this state line. All these rules popped up overnight, again, showing how quickly everything can change. But the way that we think society is structured is completely arbitrary. That is what I learned from COVID. It is completely arbitrary. It can change at any fucking moment. Okay, so better fucking take advantage of what it is that you have, um, because anything, anything can change. It is just at the moment these uh, it's designed it's done things are either done at the moment because they've always been done that way and no one wants to actually take the time to change things, so that's number one, or it's that way because it benefits someone in power. That's it. That's it. That's it. So if you are like, okay, like, well, but I have a solution that, would serve me well, and then I'm able to just do the same output, but like I would be at a better mental health, I would be at a better space and better place. No, I'll be at a better financial space and blah blah blah. No, no. Okay. If it just serves you, and you're still doing the same amount of work, they don't give a shit, right? Like it just made everything clear to me, just the arbitrariness of everything. And that is one of the many lessons I took from that time. The other one of the other lessons was about boundaries, and I really thrived during the COVID times. And going back to what I was saying earlier, it's because of my childhood. It's because during my childhood, I had to learn how to entertain myself by myself for the whole day. Like that is how I survived. And I am very grateful for the internet because that is uh, one of the tools that kept me alive at that time. And I don't know where I would be if I would be alive if it wasn't for the internet. So I know how to entertain myself on the internet. I'm recording myself talking. So the point being is the way that society and your life is currently structured, it is important to recognize anything can change at any moment. And I think this is kind of clear when you go traveling and you're in a different country. And like, let's say that you're in Spain and they take siesta, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I want to breakfast at 9 a.m. and nothing's open, or like, oh, I wanted a snack at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Nothing's open. Oh, I want dinner at 5 p.m. That's unheard of. That's unheard of, right? Like you have dinner at 10 p.m. there, right? When you go traveling, you realize that every country has their own customs. They have their own culture, their own way of organizing themselves and their day. And again, it shows you the arbitrariness in which you live in. And that should give you power to recognize what it is that what do you want to change in your life? If you could change anything, what would you want to change if everything is arbitrary? What would suit you best? What would make you the better person? What would make you healthier? What would make you happier? So that's where we are. Um, Short term, or let me talk a little bit about this. So the stock market is the financial systems are being really weird at the moment. Stock market seems to keep going up, but what is happening last week is that the we basically bailed out Japan, bought all this yen to try to prevent Japan from going into a recession or depression. But it's also because America is currently more than $40 trillion in debt, right? And some countries are not wanting to purchase American bonds, right? Which is how America funds itself partially. And so if we're not getting foreign buyers, right? Basically, like we bought out Japan so that they will then continue to buy American debt, and that American debt is also integrated with the whole AI world, right? So like if the AI world goes down, like the whole American economy is going to go down with it. And yeah, I mean, like, so I wrote an article on Substack. I'll try to link it to this video if I remember. If not, you can just Google House of Kanaz Substack. You'll find this article. This is something I've been meaning to do, and I feel like now I have the motivation or energy to do it. Anyway, so this first article that I wrote was inspired by this video that I remember seeing a few months ago on TikTok about how whenever the nodes, and I want to say in this video that she mentioned the north nodes being in Aquarius, how that tends to be a time in which there is financial, like there's a financial strife, there's a financial crisis. And so this thought has been in my mind for like months now. And I've been doing research here and there about that. And then I sat down earlier this week to write an article on this and to organize my thoughts. So I had all these snapshots of different charts. And I was like, I need to actually sit with this and look at them side by side and see what is going on. And so I looked at well, the last time, so the North Node just went into Aquarius earlier this week. Okay. And it will be there for like a year and a half. So I think until like the end of 2027, around there. And so it just went in and okay, what happened last time it was in Aquarius? Well, last time was the 2008 crisis. I said, okay, that's interesting. And then I was like, all right, what about the time before that? Well, that was in 1989. There was what I learned was the mini Friday the 13th stock market crash. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And then I was like, all right, let's go back a few. And in the 50s, when the North Node was in Aquarius in 53, was the first time there was ever like a debt ceiling crisis in the US Congress. It was the first time ever. I said, okay, all right. And then I learned that the first ever like stock market crash, even though I don't think it was called a stock market at the time, but it was like a major crisis, was in 1720. Again, the North Node was in Aquarius at that time, and that dealt with this hype so around America and the slave trade. And basically, there was like this over speculation that was happening in Britain and in France about the promises of America. And it's kind of crazy to think that like all of these crises that they listed, like the birth of the stock market crash dealt with America is like it's embedded in the fabric of America, is what I have come to realize. Anyway, so I wrote this whole article because I've been expecting some major downturn. And there's been like dips here and there, but not like to the crisis that I've been thinking, right? And so in most of these charts, Saturn and Neptune were either conjunct or opposing each other. There was some connection between Saturn and Neptune. And earlier this year, there was the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, which happens every like 30, 36 years, 37 years. So because of that conjunction, I've been like, okay, like Saturn is about structures, it's about, like our systems, and Neptune is eroding that, it's washing it away, right? Like metaphorically, that is the seas washing away the stock market. So I've been waiting for something to happen, and I have not, like, again, it's been little things here and there, but it hasn't been like the major thing. And then doing this research, and I go in the article, I started noticing that, yeah, Saturn and Neptune are somehow interacting in the majority of these charts that I pulled. And again, this is only a sample size of 5. I need to go more in depth, and that would be a book. right? But I needed to at least start with what I had. So Saturn and Neptune are doing something, but then it turns out that Jupiter often is playing a role as well. Jupiter is often connecting to Saturn in some way, whether it's squaring or opposing or conjuncting, it's usually playing some role. And Jupiter is all about magnification, right? So there's already structural things happening. Jupiter often will make that much bigger. Well, this year, Jupiter has not made any connections to Saturn until the end of the month. So at the end of the month, and let me see if I can pull up this chart because at the moment I'm talking just from memory. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen in case you are watching this as a video and you want to watch what I'm talking about. All right. So let me see if okay, let's just do it. So if I look at August 31st, it is around that time that Saturn and Jupiter will be in a trine. So Saturn will be in Aries, fire. Jupiter will be in Leo, fire. So they'll be in a trine. And again, a lot of times people say like trine is such a benefic aspect. It's 120 degrees, it's benefic, it's a good sign, blah, blah, blah. But again, the trine is something that is unlimited flow. So like it's just going to exasperate. It's gonna be an easy flow of exasperating the issue of whatever Saturn is going through. Again, Saturn is representing from a from like a global standpoint, it's representing our government, it's representing our structures. Like from a personal standpoint, if you were going through something like this, it would be your body, it would be your bones. That's what Saturn is representing. So we have that. But then, interestingly enough, we have Mars that's squaring Saturn at the same time. That is conflictual. Typically, when Mars and Saturn are doing something, there's usually someone making news. There's usually some terrorist attack or something that is conflictual happening. So to have those things happen simultaneously, I do think the end of the month is going to be precarious. Uh, the other thing that I was looking at was how so again the ruler the why my eye went to Saturn in this analysis is that the ruler of Aquarius, if I'm focused on like the North Node um, being in Aquarius, the ruler of Aquarius, the traditional ruler is Saturn. So that's where I'm like, okay, like what's happening with Saturn? The modern ruler is Uranus. So at the moment, if I look at like what's happening with Uranus at that time, well, on the day of the lunar eclipse, again, the lunar eclipse is just a full moon that is close to the nodes. So on the day of the lunar eclipse, which is on the 27th, we're going to have we're going to have Uranus T-squaring that eclipse. So Uranus is going to be squaring both the sun and the moon. Expect the unexpected. Like Friday, because the eclipse happens like at like midnight, around midnight on Friday on the East Coast. Friday on the 28th, like really anything could happen. Like I don't know what, but I would say something strange could be happening on that day or during the weekend. I don't want to say anything else other than just expect the unexpected. But at that time, going back to my what analysis I did, I also found that like when Uranus is aspecting Mercury, which it will be doing at that time because the sun is going to be conjunct Mercury at that time. Mercury in mundane astrology can represent like commercial life. Again, Uranus is bringing like unexpected things, unexpected fissure, like a lightning bolt, something unexpected. So again, there could be like an unexpected change in commercial activity. Um, there could be an unexpected thing come to light. But all of that like analysis that I did about the stock market crashes, basically the signatures that I saw across the five charts at the end of this month, so like really from the lunar eclipse, like let's say the 27th through the 31st, or even the first, if I want to be 1st of September, if I want to be generous. Like this is a period in which all of the major signatures that I saw in the other like financial crises charts, all of those are popping. They haven't popped this year. Okay. They are popping now. So that's where I'm like, listen, if there is, who knows how this is going to happen, or how, what's going to happen. But like if the American economy goes down, like what are the consequences? And I mean that in like in the most dire way, in the most dire way. Because at the moment, there's also this push that's coming from the White House of a stable coin. So one theory is like, are they just trying to like purposefully collapse the US dollar so that it wipes out the wealth of everyone? Everyone starts at zero, essentially, and that they're trying to promote this stable coin, like a form of like a crypto. And like, are they trying to replace the dollar by this crypto? Like, if the whole AI market, like they're not making a profit at the moment. Like they've invested so much. And I was talking to a friend today, and she was saying how like there's some 2026, I need to look into this, but she had mentioned like there's some 2026 like tax benefit or whatever, that if you start an AI data center, then you can use that as a tax write-off, which I think is why a lot of and you don't need to like have built it, but you need to have broken ground in order to get this tax write-off, I believe is what she said. And again, I need to actually do my research. But again, people are getting tax benefits for these data centers, which is proliferating the creation of the data centers. And you have to ask yourself, like, why do we need all these data centers? Well, you're also seeing like all these flock cameras and whatever. Like, to me, I think it's clear that it's for surveillance. Like this idea that like, oh, I'm gonna the AI that I'm writing, like you can download some AIs onto your computer. Like it's only using the energy of your computer. So this bullshit of like, oh, we need data centers. It's like, no, the reason why you need the data centers is that you have all of this fucking technology that you have planted all across the country, and you need places basically that are able to house that data and analyze that data and basically come to conclusions with that data and cross-referencing all the other governmental data sets. Like it's basically buying up all the data of everyone that lives here and then like uh, combining all of that into individual profiles for mass surveillance. Like that's what's going on there. It's not just like, oh, I'm using Claude or whatever. Like that, yeah, like that does consume water, but like what really consumes water is surveillance. Like that's the issue here, I think. Anyway, so I think it's important, at least, one thing that I am thinking about is purchasing foreign currency at the moment so that I have some, you know, Canadian dollars or euros or whatever that like if the American dollar tanks and that like the conversion rates between the US dollar and any other foreign currency becomes really bad, we're going to lose our value, right? So by converting it into something that's more stable at the moment, and again, gold is always considered king. So if you have access to a place to convert, your dollars into gold, if you have dispository, extra income, like that's probably a good thing to do at the moment. You just don't know what's going to happen. And going back to what I was saying before, like anything can change at any moment. And you have to consider all of these possibilities. You get to determine at the moment, like the probability of those possibilities, but I don't think they're all zero. I really think that we are at this point, again, that Saturn Neptune conjunction that we had at the beginning of the year. Let's go back to it. Let's look at the chart and just um, see it in action. So it was around February 20th, I believe. Let's see. February 20th around 1 p.m. Okay. And that conjunction happened at 0 degrees of Aries. 0 degrees Aries is the first degree of the whole zodiac. And so for years, I have seen that conjunction as a reset button. Like everything is getting reset. The whole world order is getting reset. That is how I have viewed that conjunction. And again, the way that astrology works is sometimes things like an event happens, but I feel like, both of these planets are like slow moving planets. It takes Saturn like 30 years about to go around the zodiac, whereas like Neptune is, I forget, like 170 years, something like that. So they're slow moving planets. So like what I'm trying to say is some of this may take time for it to actually materialize, but I feel like the dominoes are in place. Yeah. So I think it's important to keep up with what's happening in the world because if you're just watching like mainstream news, again, that I think is only going to give you a limited take. At least like look at some foreign news sites, look at some like independent journalists. There's a lot that's going on that I think is being covered independently and you have to search for it. Like recently, I've been really enjoying Katie Couric and her interviews, because she's talking about this, talking about the fall of democracy. She's talking about real things that I think are often not discussed on mainstream media sources because they don't want to frighten the public. Because again, going back to COVID, we saw how people react when there's a crisis, when it's no longer deniable, and people want to just be put in this like dreamlike state and pretend like everything is fine. They don't want to deal with being uncomfortable, and until they're forced to, and then they're just crying about it. So that is where we are at the moment. So my point is, for this coming week, for next week, at the end of August, I think it's important to have like some cash in hand, just in case. You've seen this in other countries where there's a financial crisis and then people rush to try to take money out of banks, take money out of systems, and then they run out of money. They run out of cash. Again, going back to COVID, what happens in other countries can happen here. That can happen here. Important to recognize the fragility of the system, because it is not it's not indestructible just because we all believe that it's indestructible. It's not invincible because we believe that it's invincible. Yeah, yeah, that's that's where we are. Let me let me look at, since I have the chart up. Again, the end of August is the main thing that I'm focusing on at the moment. And coming up, when does that happen? Okay, yeah. So I'll probably do another podcast before this, but coming up, in October, we're going to be entering a Venus retrograde period. So that often is a period in which people may come back in your life, like whether those are like past relationships, romantic or platonic. Um, it may be a time in which you are looking at your values and really being like, okay, like, do I actually believe in this? Do I actually stand for this? Is this what I really want? So it is like a period of introspection. So we'll be we'll be coming to that point, um, in October, uh, and that lasts for 40 days. All right. So before I head out, let's pick a few cards to end with about, um, guidance on the end of August and the beginning of September. Last time I pulled, I think, too many cards. I forget, but I got really zealous. I'm going to try to control myself this time so that the message is more succinct. I have to stop myself. So we got these four. Trying to position this. Right. Ace of Cups, first card. Ace is something new. This is ushering something new. I would like to think that that is something good, that we are ushering something new, but this is like the beginning of something new. What? I don't know. Okay. So then the next card is the Seven of Swords, which is the card of futility. I feel like that's one of the feelings I have had during this podcast episode of the futility of it all. There is only so much that we who have no official positions of power other than our own authority, there's only so much we can do. And a lot of the times it may seem futile. Like, what is the point? And I think we all have to come to points of, why are we here? Like, what, like, seriously though, like, why, what is the reason for you? What motivates you to live? Like, what are you fighting for? Like, what? And I'm 100% serious. Like, why are you living? By the time that you die, what is it that you want to have accomplished? What is your person? What is your purpose for existing? You're getting really existential. Now we have another ace. Two aces in a row on the spread. So Ace of Wands, new energy. Yeah, this is a new surge of something different. Interesting. Then the last card, victory. This is like all over the place. Okay. So we have the Six of Wands, which is almost like the opposite of what this futility is making me think. Like, the futility is like, what's the whole point? And then the victory is like, okay, like I completed my mission. So maybe the futility is like, again, like, what is your mission? There's something changing, there's something new happening. And a lot of times we may feel very overwhelmed by newness, especially if you have a chart that has a lot of fixed energy. You got the Taurus, you got Leo energy, got some Aquarius. Do you have Scorpio? Do you have a lot of those placements? Well, sometimes when something new is happening, you may get this sense of paralysis because you're like, shit, like, how do I adapt? What do we do? And you can get overwhelmed, and then you can be like, okay, like, you can get stuck in a paralysis. Maybe you get in this thought spiral of like everything's futile. But I think the victory here is like overcoming that futility. Like, we need to come to that point of knowing how to navigate this new world, this new system, this new whatever. Like, whatever changes are coming, whatever arbitrary changes are coming, we have to know, we have to figure out a way to navigate them in such a way that we are able to conquer these feelings of futility, to this point of victory. And what's interesting about victory is this is a Jupiter and Leo card. What do we have at the moment for the next year? We have Jupiter and Leo. We have Jupiter and Leo. That's really interesting. This futility is a moon in Aquarius. Well, the moon will be in Aquarius the day before the lunar eclipse and the day before that. So around, what is that? 26th, 25th, probably that's when the moon will be in Aquarius. And yeah, okay, so if I think about it that way, like the feeling that you're getting right now, right? So today's Sunday. The feeling that you may have leading up to the lunar eclipse. So the feelings that you have on Thursday of this week, of Wednesday, maybe even Tuesday. Maybe something happens and you're just like, some major news and you just feel so futile, right? There's a lot of this new energy. I think part of it is like navigating that. Maybe that's victory. I mean, I would also like to think that like victory is also a sign of good news happening, but who knows? I tend to think about this as like for your own personal development. And maybe not exactly. It would be great if like we globally had a feeling of victory, whatever that like is. But I think to me, these cards are speaking the story of a lot of change, these feelings of helplessness, of uncertainty, and figuring out how to navigate them. That's what I'm seeing. That is the work now. And I feel like that's what I've talked about for the past hour is kind of coming to awareness of what's going on, what the world is at the moment, and figuring out how you can navigate that world, not just to survive, but to fulfill your reason for existing in a way that makes you feel like you are thriving. So that is all I have for you today. And I hope, if you're still listening to this, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, my plan is to write maybe one or two articles a month on some topic that I find interesting that I'm working through. And again, if you have questions, feel free to write a comment, or you can contact me at the houseofkanaz.com. And I am also currently taking on small projects and metaphysical consulting. So if you are interested in having an appointment, feel free to contact me. All right, let's see where things land in a month. And until then, take care of yourself.